Hey, I'm golf broadcaster Matt Adams. The updated and expanded second edition of my book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments, is now available. Readers can expect to march with Arnie's Army at the 1960 U.S. Open, relive Jack Nicklaus's remarkable 1986 Masters win, and be amazed by the Tiger Slam. The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments. Pick it up where fine books are sold, including BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, sports fans, and welcome to another edition of Yesterday's Sports on the Sports History Network. Today's guest was supposed to be my friend Dave Depaola, but we had some major technical issues. Thankfully, I have Dave's comments down on paper, so although it will not be as good as actually hearing Dave's voice, it is undoubtedly better than just scrapping the whole thing. Since we're in the middle of an intense heat wave here in the Northeast, we thought we'd try to briefly cool things off and talk about the 1975 Divisional Playoff game between the Minnesota Vikings and the Dallas Cowboys. When you think about the 1975 playoff game, your first thought is probably the Hail Mary pass from Roger Staubach to Drew Pearson. But most people don't realize there was much more to this game than that pass. For those who like a wide-open, high-scoring offensive game, this probably wasn't an exciting game for you to watch. But this game was a classic for those who want a hard-hitting defensive battle. As a 13-year-old Dallas Cowboys fanatic, I was hyped and nervous about this game. The Vikings, having won the NFC title the last 2 years, were a popular team, and my neighborhood was loaded with Vikings fans. They were all telling me how the Vikings were going to put an end to the Cowboys' fairy tale season. I was beginning to believe they were right. While I knew the Cowboys had a good team, it was in fact a fairy tale season for them. With 12 rookies on the team, this was supposed to be a rebuilding season for Dallas. But they surprised everyone, including their coach Tom Landry, by posting a 10-4 regular season record and making the playoffs as the wild card team. Following comment is from Dave. To be honest with you, Mark, because it was a rebuilding year and the Cowboys were 10-4 compared to the Vikings, who finished at 12-2, I didn't have high hopes going into that game. I was a high school junior and remember the Cowboys losing some great players. Hall of Fame players like Bob Lilly and Chuck Howley had retired, but the Cowboys had a good draft that year and 12 rookies made the team. The Dirty Dozen. One of those rookies, Burton Lawless, won the starting job at left guard, and second-year man Ed Too Tall Jones was the starter at left defensive end. I never paid much attention to the betting lines, but Minnesota was an 8-point favorite in this game. Following comment is back to me. That's right, Dave. The Vikings had breezed through their season with a 12-2 record and easily won their division. But I couldn't help but wonder if perhaps that impressive record wasn't misleading, since they had not played against one single playoff team the entire season. Following comment is from Dave. Yes, and most people thought the Vikings were better than they were. I even heard some interviews with the Vikings players who said they thought the 1975 team was their best. But if you look at the standings in their division, the Packers and Bears were 4-10, and the Lions were 7-7. Back to me commenting. The Vikings were undefeated after 10 games, but hadn't played anyone. Okay, the following comment is back to me. The Vikings were undefeated after 10 games, but hadn't played anyone. Let's look at the records of those 10 opponents. The 49ers finished the season at 5-9. The Browns were 3-11. The Bears were 4-10. The Jets were 3-11. The Lions were 7-7. The Packers and Falcons were 4-10. The Saints and Chargers were 2-12. People talk about the 1972 Dolphins having an easy schedule, but this is pathetic. Okay, we're back to Dave commenting. That's right, Mark, and they finally played a team with a winning record, the Redskins, who finished 8-6 that season, and they lost. Exactly, Dave. Now, Dave commenting again. Another thing I wanted to mention before we get to the game is the Cowboys roster. They only had one player on their team that played for another team, Preston Pearson, who they picked up from the Steelers. Every other player on the team was homegrown. The Cowboys drafted players, taught them the system, and developed them. That's one of the significant differences between how the game was back then and now. Rosters didn't change that much from year to year at that time. Today, teams enter a new season with at least 1/3 of the team from the previous season going to other teams. Okay, we're back to me commenting. That's true, Dave, and I think that's why the Cowboys and Steelers were the two most dominant teams in the 1970s. They both had great scouting systems, with Gil Brandt as the Cowboys and Pittsburgh had Bill Nunn. They both built their teams from the draft, not trades. The game was played on a Sunday, 3 days after Christmas. Considering the game was in Minnesota at Metropolitan Stadium, the game time temperature of 25 degrees was considered relatively mild. Dallas won the coin toss and elected to receive. Minnesota kicker Fred Cox was not known for kicking the ball deep, and this kick went only to the 20-yard line. Backup linebacker Warren Capone dropped it, and running back Preston Pearson picked it up and was immediately tackled. This was not a good way for the Cowboys to start the game. 3 straight runs up the middle gave Dallas a first down at their 30-yard line. 2 more runs gave Dallas a first down at their 40-yard line. After a pitch out lost a yard, Roger Staubach connected with fullback Robert Newhouse on a short pass which gained 10 yards. But a clipping penalty negated the play and put the Cowboys in a 2nd and 16 situation from their 35-yard line. I have to question the pitch out, Dave. They had 5 runs in a row that gained 20 yards and 2 first downs. Why not keep running it? Dave commenting, exactly. Even Roger Staubach said that sometimes Coach Landry would get too creative and overthink things. Back to me commenting. I guess it was difficult for Landry not to overthink because he had that degree in engineering and he couldn't resist using that mindset in football games. A 19-yard pass reception by Preston Pearson followed a 6-yard run. From the Minnesota 41, Staubach dropped back to pass, but an intense pass rush by Carl Eller forced Roger to run, picking up only 1 yard. A run up the middle by Newhouse gained 2 yards. Staubach threw to Drew Pearson on 3rd and 7, but the ball was batted away. Punter Mitch Hoops tried the coffin corner kick, but the ball went into the end zone and the Vikings took over at their 20-yard line. Back to Dave commenting. The Vikings defense stopped them when they needed to. 4 guys on that defense made it to the Pro Bowl. Defensive tackle Alan Page, who also made All-Pro, middle linebacker Jeff Seaman, and defensive backs Bobby Bryant and Paul Krause. Their defense was ranked number 1 in the league in several categories. Carl Eller didn't make the Pro Bowl that season, but was having a great game. Yeah, he sure was, Dave. Back to Dave commenting. Mark, we're always talking about how different the game was back then, and one big difference was the kicking game. Dallas had the ball on the Vikings' 38-yard line and elected to punt instead of attempting a field goal. It would have been about a 53 or 54-yard field goal. That's a makeable field goal in today's NFL. But back then, most kickers would miss it from that distance. Yeah, that's a good point, Dave. There were very few kickers who were successful beyond 45 yards. Tom Dempsey could do it, maybe Jan Stenerud, Garo Yepremian. Dave commenting, that's right, and even those guys were barely clearing the crossbar. Back to myself commenting. A short pass to Stu Voigt was snuffed out by safety Charlie Waters and lost a yard. A 15-yard pass completion to John Gilliam followed a 1-yard run. A screen pass to Chuck Foreman gained nothing. On second down, Fran Tarkenton threw long to John Gilliam, but the pass was overthrown. On third down, defensive tackle Jethro Pugh put pressure on Tarkenton and forced him to throw the ball away. After a 44-yard punt by Neil Claybaugh, the Cowboys took over on their 26-yard line. Newhouse ran up the middle for a 9-yard gain. On 2nd and 1, the Cowboys were offsides and penalized 5 yards. Staubach attempted a short pass to Newhouse, but threw the ball too high, making it 3rd and 6. Alan Page blocked another pass attempt, and then a roughing the punter penalty on Minnesota gave the Cowboys the ball back. Alan Page forced the Cowboys fumble after a pitch-out gained only 1 yard. Although Dallas recovered the fumble, they faced a 3rd and 17. A run by Preston Pearson gained 6 yards, and Dallas punted. Minnesota took possession on their 37-yard line. 3 straight runs did not gain enough yardage for a first down, and Minnesota punted. The hitting was getting more intense. The Cowboys took over on their 25-yard line. 2 runs gained 8 yards, but a 3rd down pass was dropped. Dallas punted. Minnesota took over on their 27-yard line. After an incomplete pass, it appeared that defensive tackle Jethro Pugh had himself a sack on 2nd down, but Tarkenton ducked the tackle and ran for 16 yards. After no gain on a running play, the first quarter ended. Well, we still have 3 more quarters to go. We will end it today, and we will have part 2 next week. We'll pick up at the beginning of the second quarter. Okay, hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, and God bless.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history. But as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.